Patrick, welcome to Product Growth Stories. So excited to have you here and talk about your journey at LSpark and your insights on helping SaaS startups scale. So I think Spark has nurtured over 130 SaaS businesses, and I see you've raised over 200 million in follow-on funding, which is extremely impressive. So excited to dive into how you've achieved all that. Can you tell me what, inspired you guys to beginning to start LSpark?
Sure, yeah. So it's founded by myself and Leo Lax. And Leo had history doing acceleration before. There was something called the Newbridge affiliate model. Newbridge was a telecom business based in Ottawa, international business, ended up selling to Alcatel-Lucent for close to 11 billion. And they had a funnel. They had the mothership, and there were certain things the mothership was never going to work on, or the idea wasn't necessarily directly in what they were going to do, but there were still good opportunities. So there was 30 companies that kind of came out of that, founded or were connected in some way. And about 12 years ago, Leo was wrapping up his fund. I had just come back to Wesley Clover after working in the video game business for a little while. And Canada was just getting into something called Venture Capital Action Plan, where they were trying to re-stimulate the VC incubator and accelerator model. And we said, listen, we're going to jump in this model. There was definitely some Techstars was out there, Ycom, some other was Founder Fuel in Montreal. There was some stuff happening in Canada. And we just said, listen, let's take a crack at this. We're only going to concentrate on SaaS, which if I go back 12 years ago, not everybody was still SaaS at the time. Now I would say it's maybe at its really time in the sun. And there was still some brain drain happening. If you really thought you needed to create a magical company, you had to go to that mat and behind your shoulder in San Francisco. And it was a matter of let's work on companies that are B2B SaaS and let's pair them up with a mentor that has been a CEO. They've raised, they've worked on product, they've done that thing. And that entrepreneur that has 100 things on fire, which is the main fire that you should be working on. So,
Which is the hardest problem. One of the hardest problems. How would you differentiate LSpark within the Canadian startup ecosystem?
I would say, so for one, we're a for-profit, which is definitely a different ball game than most players in the Canadian market. Most of the players are not for profit, and I would say have multiple mandates, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a matter of that's really traditionally what happens. We have 1 to 2 mandates. So first and foremost, we're driving our SaaS or our B2B program, and then we've done at times some corporate innovation as well. So that is it a bit different than most of the players. And then our model. We have a very unique model where we take a 3% warrant for companies coming into the program that get into our program. And that warrant only converts if the company raises during our program or a year after. So about an 18-month window. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't convert, nothing happens. If it does convert, we're on the cap table. However, any follow-on funding, then we get diluted. So our goal is we're helping early days, and that at a later date, the share value will go up and it'll be a good venture for us. And we're trying to be evergreen. So then we take them, try and, recycle it back in.
Yeah, I like that because you're also limiting the total negative impact or the perception of risk for the founder. Makes sense. I'd love to ask you this question. It's on my mind right now, which is, I don't know how to formulate it. There's something, yeah, maybe you'll have to help me out here, but it's right now we have AI on everything. And I have a feeling that this is actually going to put margin pressure on B2B SaaS because now customers expect more and you can ask for more customizations, which kind of makes it not the same kind of predictable revenue that B2B SaaS used to be. How do you see AI affecting the margins and the profitability and the whole VC ecosystem for B2B SaaS?
I'd like to expand it beyond just margins. I think, what's really happened, and I think it's been actually a good thing. When we first started about 12 years ago, a company was supposed to be purely SaaS, no integration, no service, no anything. I think, the lumpiness over COVID and unpredictability on some cash flow led to integration and service work being more accepted. And then the next piece that I think is really happening is AI is we're getting some introduction on some newer pricing models. Is there consumption pricing models? Is there credits? Is there all sorts of other aspects? But I think one of the biggest pieces for me is really that integration. I think there are certain SaaS tools, let's call it Slack, that I can put it in place. I can start using it. Yes, they have a freemium model. Most shops, I think, probably end up converting to some kind of paid, but it's a low barrier to entry. Where there's other softwares that really, for the best interest of the company, the SaaS company, and for the user, having someone walk me through integrating it and making sure I'm onboarded properly is going to be the best case. It makes a big difference. And then to your point, as we get more complicated software that then is taking some kind of user data or proprietary data that I have in house that is going to streamline or make more efficient some process I have, it really then is really becoming very gray. How much is services? How much is that integration? How much is all these pieces? So I think having a flexible kind of pricing model makes a big difference. So I think it's broader than margin, and that's really going to be net retention value, upselling. What are all these other pieces? Because I think as we've gone for the last 12 years that I've been in the game, it's been fascinating to see all these other areas we're starting to measure as well.
Yeah, it's just one element of the business, but it's having such a big impact. Well, when you're looking at attracting new founders to LSpark, what's the most effective strategy? Do you find that you need to market, or is the kind of Canadian space small enough that everyone knows your name already?
I would say it isn't. I think because I think most the strongest companies are the ones that have their head down and don't even really know what's out there because they're actually building something and they're out working extremely hard to make it happen. I believe every program really needs to do marketing. And I think that's to obviously try and create the inbound, but you also need to have an outbound strategy. A lot of companies, as I said, I think aren't fully aware of all the programs that are available. So how are you making yourself available to have talk? And I would say, and I think this for all things, but how are you showing value? So anytime we're with a company, whether they're very early stage or they're someone that I'm trying to make sure we are recruiting into our program, how am I from the beginning showing some kind of value to them, whether that's a connection, a thought, some piece of feedback, those pieces, that really becomes, I think, a critical piece.
Yeah, it's the fundamentals of marketing. Just actually doing something useful is a great way to start a relationship. And does LSpark do you find that certain channels work better? Like, how are you finding it right now? I hear a lot of folks are complaining, going back to the AI thing, people are complaining that everything's saturated now. I hear this a lot. How are you finding that?
My prediction, and I'm waiting to go to Web Summit or to Toronto Tech Week this year. Like when I was at Collision the last 2 years, yes, the advent of the I would say digital agency that was masked as a product was in full flight. I think a lot of those individuals doing that are now going, all right, I'm not going to raise money. I'm just going to go get clients that
Mhm.
want me to be the skill of a consultant doing some digital process for them. So I think I've seen a lot of those companies fall by the wayside. They're not trying to raise. And so the other stuff is going. But I think when I go to Web Summit or I'm at Toronto Tech Week or Startup Fest this summer, I'll get a better sense of just how active or what is going on. I think a lot is possibly being built. Like that's the other side is we always keep saying it. It seems like it's a lot easier to start a company. Now it's easier to start, but it's easier to create a concept and to get even code, right? There's all these like tools. So I think to prove out your piece becomes very fast. I think the question is, are you doing something that's valuable that someone's going to want to repeat doing?
And would you say, I'm just thinking more about this AI topic, do you think this will affect the amount of people that need funding? In my mind, it's gonna raise the bar for when you would want funding because there's so much you can do now with less capital, basically. So I would imagine that more companies may be able to achieve their revenue targets and growth targets without needing that capital injection. How do you see it?
So you're asking the right question, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs maybe don't ask themselves the right question going in. They're going into they're going in to build something, and they possibly don't understand the business side enough. So they've read too much on TechCrunch or BetaKit or somewhere else that they believe they need to raise. We oftentimes will talk with a lot of companies that the entrepreneur is comfortable enough to say that they think they might not raise, which is fine. That then it's not. And I think we got to get away from lifestyle being a dirty word or bootstrap being a dirty word. Like those aren't bad things. It's what are you trying to achieve, and recognizing like when you bring on investment, you're bringing on other partners and other people that have a say in the direction or where you're trying to go. So I think we have to be very careful of as we're starting to build and what do we want. And it can change, but to have that plan of what am I trying to build? What do I think it will become? And is venture or even angel or any of those aspects really good? I think you're definitely right. It's a lot easier and quicker to get going. I think it's still to tackle really big ideas that are instrumental that people are going to use every single day. I think traditionally still the best way is to get those early customers, validate, and then bring on investment to really go at those ideas hard.
I can see that too. And also, there's a lot of hype, but when you actually go build something with AI, you quickly need real engineers, real experts to get something done. And it's kind of like the paradox of automation. They're now more expensive engineers than before.
And I think we're all dealing with it in our own lives. And I think larger companies are dealing this. The other piece is a lot of things are very niche. I think, and I'm surprised that because I predicted this a couple of years ago and it really hasn't happened, but I predict a lot of consolidation.
Mhm.
Like, why I don't want to log into a multitude of other things to do one or two tasks that I need to do. Why not like my main task or my main operating system, whether it be Google, Microsoft, or whoever? Can you just put that in there as well?
This is like ClickUp's thing, right? It's like we do absolutely every business task. You never that makes sense. And at the same time, because it's so easy and because it's easier to market to extremely narrow niches, I see the same kind of run your business in a box SaaS solution for every like micro thing you could imagine. In fact, I even talked to some other company. There's a few of these that are doing. They will just like slap payroll into whatever you're building. So there's even an entire ecosystem around that. Sort of the reverse. Do you see them all get purchased later?
I think a lot of them will get purchased. And I think the other thing is that an investor gave me some feedback today on the company we're looking at. And his comment was they built too much. They should have built 10% of what they built and gone to see if they could get some revenue. I think that's also another piece is that how much are we trying to build to then go validate? It's like you go validate really quickly if there is something and then try and drive what the client wants.
Man, I'm trying to get people to do that sometimes. Sometimes I do some coaching for SaaS founders, and unfortunately, I've spoken to many people where maybe they spent 250, 500K to build something, and they didn't look at distribution. And you could have looked at distribution. You should have spent the money figuring that out before you built a single thing. Because once you see customers, you'll realize, oh, they want a slightly different.
And this is why I still think vertical is a really big strength, like vertical SaaS is in, if you look at, I would say, and I don't have the data, but I would say 60% of our founders come from the industry they're serving. So they know the pain point extremely well. And they have friends or people they know so they can get that early adoption. And then it's a matter of maybe the idea can grow beyond that. Again, go into your niche. Like I go into my niche, I serve that, then can it apply? Because it, without a doubt, every year we have a company that the conversation is there's for exaggeration, but 2 billion SMBs. And it's sure, but do they have the money and how do you attract them? And invariably, 6 months later, they're going, oh, we're going after enterprise.
We only need one customer. I like the strategy. Just one sale then. Yeah, well, you speak to dozens of SaaS founders regularly. What kind of trends are you noticing right now among the people that are succeeding versus those that are really struggling to get started and get that distribution?
To your point, distribution, I think is like how are you getting to a channel? How are you getting to a sale? We just did an investor day at the end of February in Toronto, and one of our alumni companies. It used to be called Transparent Kitchen. During COVID, they had to make a massive pivot. They're called Tables, TABLZ, very much connected into the reservation platforms. And so the reservation platforms who already have a bunch of the restaurants, they're providing extra value on how, as a diner, I'm going for my anniversary dinner and I want the Eiffel Tower at that prime restaurant. I can pay in a couple extra dollars. So they're going into kind of I would say, a very defined industry, a defined mechanism of reservation. And there's another way to add value. And they're on the backing of that channel. I think I'm seeing more companies looking at channel and how do they do it. And I think previously, a lot of companies sold through to the channel and they recognized how the channel worked and you had to feed the channel. And I think there was this period of time where people thought, oh, if I make a partnership, the channel's my new sales. And it's no, they're like, it's what's that movie with the flower that bites, whatever. And Seymour, right? Yeah, yeah. And it's another of you got to pardon? Yeah, exactly. You need to feed the beans until it gets going because you need to prove that there's value for them. And I think that's something we often forget. But I think also looking at platforms like it's
Mhm.
look at these ecosystems, the Shopify or the Salesforce or the Zoom, there's massive amounts of partners on them. How do you rise above that noise?
That's a great point. Yeah. This reminds me of another similar idea, like the simple logical answers that are not so easy, like, oh, I'll just sell enterprise, where sometimes founders are thinking, oh, if it's hard to get distribution, I'll just use affiliates. Affiliates are shopping around too, and they want a guaranteed win if they're going to put the effort in. So it's equally difficult. Some of those other solutions.
Absolutely.
Well, how do you see that the SaaS landscape is going to evolve in Canada? I know it's hard to predict the future, but what do you see coming in the next 5 years for Canada?
I think the AI stuff is going to get very deep. I think we are going to see just our knowledge base will really change over. I often, if I pause for a sec, COVID, my sister works in a legacy industry. And when COVID happened, about 150 people, they all had to go home. They had no e-commerce and everybody had a desktop. And I think a lot of times, I think when you're only working in technology or talking to people in technology, they often forget like just how far some industries you're ready to adopt cutting edge, you're ready to do the next thing, where a lot of everything's like just good enough. Like it's okay. I was talking with somebody recently, a company, a tech company is trying to help in the marketplace, but the home, like connecting homeowners with small construction people. And a lot of people don't realize you need to take the lint out of your dryer or don't need you to recognize that to change the air filter. And it's the same thing like that's people. People run companies and there's a whole bunch of companies that it's the same thing. They go, why would you change my payroll? Why would I change my ERP or all these other aspects? So I think the AI will change stuff. I think it's going to be slower than we think. It's going to be much more cooperative, a touching base and working through something to maximize on stuff. That would be my boldest. And then I think there will be some amalgamation. I think we still have some companies in the tech space that are riding some of their value or some of the dollars they raised in 2022. And they're at the point they've already reached out to, if you talk to the M&A groups, they have a bunch of people reaching out to them with like desperate looking for parachutes and they're not. So I think we're going to see possibly some companies fade away as well. But I think there will be a lot of opportunity as well.
Well, Patrick, this has been fantastic. Excellent conversation. Thank you so much. And let's see, what would be for B2B SaaS founders out there? Can you like one final piece of parting wisdom? What do they need?
I think one of our mentors says it all the time, and I think it's very critical. Revenue solves all problems of cash. So if you focus on gaining revenue, it'll lead to a lot of good things, right? Because then you're showing traction. You'll have conversation with investors. The banks like it. Accelerators like it. It's better for your bank account. Like it's just, and then you can get into that conversation and ideally find another customer similar to that and do it again.
Excellent.
All right.